My daughter framed me with heroin, sent me to jail for 5 months, and as I tell this story, the truth finally unravels and destroys our family forever completely. My daughter, let us call her Sarah, has been nothing but trouble for years. I do not know if it is how we raised her, or if she is just wired this way, but it feels like she was born to test my patience. She is selfish, ungrateful, and never takes responsibility for anything. It was not always this way. When she was little, she was sweet, a bit stubborn, sure, but I thought it was normal kid stuff. But then middle school hit, and everything changed. She started acting like the world owed her something, like she was better than everyone else. She would throw tantrums if she did not get her way, slam doors, scream at us, you name it. My wife kept saying it is just a phase, she will grow out of it. She did not. By the time Sarah hit her teenage years, it was like she decided to make our lives a living hell. She lied about everything. Where she was, who she was with, what she was doing. If her lips were moving, she was probably lying. She skipped school so much that the principal called us in for a meeting. I told her she needed to shape up, but she just rolled her eyes and said, "Whatever, Dad." At 16, she dropped out of high school entirely. One day she came home and announced she was not going back. "School's stupid," she said. "I do not need it." My wife and I begged her to reconsider, but she was not hearing it. She packed her things, said she was leaving, and walked out the door without even looking back. She ran off with some boyfriend, a loser who did not have a job or any prospects. I do not even remember his name. For 3 years, we did not hear a word from her. No calls, no texts, nothing. My wife was heartbroken. She cried herself to sleep so many nights wondering if Sarah was okay, if she would ever come back. Me? I was angry, but I also felt relieved. Without Sarah around, the house was quiet, no drama, no fighting. I thought maybe this was for the best. Then one night she showed up on our doorstep. It was pouring rain, and she was standing there soaked to the bone, holding a trash bag full of clothes. "I have nowhere else to go," she said. My first instinct was to slam the door in her face, but my wife rushed past me and pulled her inside before I could say a word. She hugged Sarah like she had just come back from war, even though Sarah had not bothered to call us in 3 years. "She is our daughter," my wife kept saying. "We cannot just leave her out there." I let her stay. But I knew it was a mistake, and boy, was I right. At first I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she had changed. Maybe she had finally learned something from her time away. No. Within days she was back to her old ways. She did not look for a job, did not help around the house, did not do anything except sit on the couch, scrolling through her phone. We would ask her to do something simple. Take out the trash, do the dishes, anything. And she would roll her eyes like we were asking her to move mountains. "Why cannot you do it?" she would say. "I am tired." Tired from what? Sitting on her ass all day. And then there were the late nights. She would leave the house after dinner, saying she was going out for a walk, but she would be gone for hours sometimes. She would not come home until after midnight. When I asked where she had been, she would just shrug and say nowhere, like it was none of my business. She would come back smiling like she did not have a care in the world. Then flop down on the couch and start scrolling through her phone again. I tried to talk to my wife about it, but she kept making excuses. "She has been through a lot," she would say. "She just needs time to adjust." Adjust to what? Sitting around all day acting like the queen of the house while we bent over backward to accommodate her. One night I could not take it anymore. Sarah had been out until 1 a.m., and when she finally came home, I confronted her. "Where the hell have you been?" I asked. She just laughed and said, "Why do you care?" That is when I told her she needed to start pulling her weight or find somewhere else to live. Her response, "You were supposed to take care of me." That is what parents do. I could not believe it. After everything she had done, dropping out of school, running away, ignoring us for 3 years, she still thought we owed her something. That was the moment I decided I had had enough. I gave her an ultimatum. She had 24 hours to pack her things and leave. My wife tried to argue, but I shut her down. "She is an adult," I said. "She made her choices. It is time for her to deal with the consequences." At first, Sarah did not take me seriously. She just laughed and said, "Yeah, okay, Dad," like it was some kind of joke. But when she realized I was not kidding, her attitude changed. She started yelling. "You are a terrible father," she screamed. "You do not love me." I stood my ground and gave her my word. She stormed off to her room, slamming the door so hard that the whole house shook. My wife gave me the silent treatment for the rest of the day, but I did not care. It happened before the 24 hours I gave Sarah to leave were even up. I was in the living room, sitting on the couch and scrolling through the news on my phone, trying to decompress after another argument with my wife about her enabling Sarah. My patience was already worn thin, but I figured I just had to hold out until tomorrow night, then Sarah would be gone for good, and I could finally have my home back. But life has a funny way of kicking you when you are already down. There was a loud knock at the door, 3 quick, sharp bangs that sent my heart racing. It was not a friendly knock. I got up to answer it, my stomach twisting into knots. When I opened the door, there were 3 police officers standing there, all of them looking dead serious. "Sir, we have a warrant to search your property," one of them said. My mind went blank for a second. "What? Why?" "We received an anonymous tip about illegal drugs being stored in this house," the officer explained. "The report is filed under your name." My name? My house? I felt like the ground had just been pulled out from under me. I wanted to argue, to slam the door in their faces, but I knew that would not get me anywhere. So I stepped aside and let them in, feeling a sense of dread settle over me like a heavy blanket. They spread out quickly, one officer staying in the living room while the others began searching the house. My wife stood frozen in the hallway, her face pale as a ghost. Sarah, on the other hand, sat on the couch completely unfazed. She even had the nerve to smirk at me as the officers went upstairs to check the bedrooms. I knew I did not have proof, but I knew this was her doing. Who else could it be? She had been sneaking around, staying out late, hanging with God knows who. She was the only one who had anything to gain from this chaos. The officers searched her room first. I stood in the hallway, watching as they tore through her things, flipping through her drawers, pulling the sheets off her bed, emptying out her backpack. But they did not find anything. Not a single thing. I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was all a misunderstanding. Maybe Sarah had not done anything after all. Then they moved on to my room. I did not think they would find anything there. Why would they? I was not involved in anything illegal, and I certainly did not have drugs in my house. But then one of the officers pulled back the mattress on my bed and stopped. "Here," he said, holding up a bag filled with what I immediately recognized as heroin. As the officer held up the first bag of heroin, I glanced at Sarah, hoping to see shock or confusion on her face. Instead, she smirked, her lips curling into a look that sent a chill down my spine. She did not flinch, did not deny anything. She just sat there like this was all a game to her. My blood boiled as I realized she was not just indifferent. She was proud of what she had done. I could not breathe. It felt like the walls were closing in on me. "That is not mine," I said automatically, my voice shaking. But the officers were not listening. They kept searching, and by the time they were done, they had found several more bags hidden under my bed and across the room. "Sir, you are under arrest for possession of a controlled substance," one of them said as they pulled out the handcuffs. My wife burst into tears. Sarah just sat there watching the whole thing like it was a movie. When they cuffed me and led me out the door, I looked back at her one last time, hoping to see some kind of guilt or remorse on her face. Instead, she smiled. Smiled. The next few hours were a blur. They took me down to the station, fingerprinted me, took my mugshot. I kept saying over and over that the drugs were not mine, that someone had set me up, but no one cared. The evidence was in my house, under my bed. That was enough for them. They denied me bail, saying the amount of heroin they found suggested I was involved in distribution. My lawyer tried to fight it, but it did not matter. I was stuck in jail, waiting for the investigation to play out. Over the next few weeks, they started looking into the case. They tested the drugs for fingerprints, checked for DNA, anything that could link them to me. But there was nothing. My fingerprints were not on the bags, and there was no evidence tying me to the drugs. Still, that did not mean I was off the hook. The house was in my name, which meant the drugs were my responsibility unless I could prove otherwise. My lawyer argued that someone else must have planted them there, but without solid evidence, it was my word against theirs. I knew it was Sarah. I did not know how she had done it, but I knew it was her. Maybe she had been storing the drugs in my room without me noticing, or maybe she had planted them there as a way to get back at me for kicking her out. Either way, she was the only one who could have done it. I spent 5 agonizing months in jail while the case dragged on. Not because the investigation was complicated or because there was not enough evidence to clear my name, but simply because the court's schedule was backlogged. Apparently, justice had to wait its turn, even when someone's life was being torn apart. The delay felt like an eternity. Every day in that cell was another day I sat with my thoughts, replaying everything over and over. The betrayal, the humiliation, the helplessness. It all circled in my head like a broken record. My body was locked up, but my mind never stopped pacing. I could not stop thinking about how my own daughter had done this to me. I wondered if she was laughing about it, going about her life like nothing had happened while I was stuck in a place I did not belong. My wife visited me a few times during those months, but even her presence felt like another weight on my chest. She was not there to offer support or reassurance. Not really. Every time she came, it felt like she was probing, fishing for answers I could not give her. I needed her to believe in me, to fight for me, but instead she just seemed confused, unsure if she could trust the man she had been married to for 20 years. "Why would Sarah do something like this?" she asked during one visit, her voice hesitant, like she could not even say the words out loud without doubting herself. I clenched my fist so tightly my knuckles turned white. "You know why?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm but failing. "You have seen what she is like. You have seen her lie, manipulate, twist things to get what she wants. This is not new." She shook her head, her face pale and drawn. "But planting drugs, getting you arrested, that is not just lying. That is... I do not know. It is evil." Her voice cracked, and she looked down at her hands, wringing them like they held the answers. "She has been on this path for years," I said bitterly. "You just did not want to see it. You kept making excuses for her. She has been through a lot. Every time she crossed the line, you let her get away with it. And now this is where we are." My words hit her like a slap, but I did not care. I was too angry, too tired, too broken to soften the truth for her. "Maybe you just did not know what was happening," she said during another visit, her voice trembling. Maybe there is more to this." I stared at her, stunned by how little faith she had in me. "Do you even hear yourself?" I snapped. "You are my wife. You have known me for 2 decades. Do you really think I would get involved in drugs? Do you really think I would risk everything for what? Some heroin under my bed?" She did not answer. She just sat there looking at the floor like a scolded child. But her silence spoke volumes. She did not believe me, not completely. She might have wanted to, but deep down she had doubts. And that doubt cut deeper than anything else. The worst part was knowing that Sarah had planned this. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This was not some spur-of-the-moment decision. This was calculated. She had taken the time to hide the drugs in my room, knowing it would shift the blame onto me. She had reported me anonymously, making sure the police had a reason to show up with a warrant. She had done everything she could to frame me, and it had worked. And yet, my own wife could not see it. My parents, who visited one time, could not see it. Even some of my so-called friends started to distance themselves, whispering behind my back. The evidence might not have pointed to me directly, but the stigma of being arrested for drugs was enough to make people doubt. And doubt is a powerful thing. It sticks to you like a stain you cannot wash off. While the court delayed my hearing again and again, I had nothing to do but sit in that cell and stew in my anger. I thought about all the times Sarah had lied to my face, all the times I had given her chances she did not deserve. I thought about the way she had smirked when the police took me away, like she knew exactly what she was doing. I thought about my wife's tears, not because I was in jail, but because she did not know if she could trust me anymore. By the time I finally got my day in court, I was not the same person who had walked into that jail 5 months earlier. I was harder, angrier, and less willing to forgive. The system had failed me, my family had failed me, and all because of the selfish actions of one person, my own daughter. When the evidence finally came to light, Sarah's texts, the witnesses who saw her sneaking around, the lack of fingerprints or DNA tying me to the drugs, it was like the world suddenly remembered I existed. The charges against me were dropped, but the damage was already done. 5 months of my life were gone. 5 months where I was treated like a criminal, doubted by the people I thought loved me. My name might have been cleared legally, but socially, emotionally, I knew I would never be the same. I was not just angry at Sarah. I was angry at everyone who doubted me, who had left me to rot in that cell while they questioned whether I was the kind of man who would hide heroin under his bed. And in that anger, a seed of revenge started to grow. I did not just want Sarah to face the consequences of her actions. I wanted her to know what it felt like to lose everything, to have the world look at her the way it had looked at me. I wanted her to pay. The first thing I did when I got home was sit in the living room in silence. My wife was there, standing awkwardly by the doorway like she did not know what to say. Maybe she thought I would be thrilled to be back, or maybe she expected me to forgive everything and move on, but I could not even look at her without feeling a mix of betrayal and anger. "Why did not you believe me?" I finally asked, breaking the silence. My voice cracked a little, which pissed me off even more. I wanted to sound strong, not broken. She did not answer right away. She just stood there, wringing her hands. It was hard. "Okay," she said. "The drugs were found in your room. What was I supposed to think?" "You were supposed to know me," I snapped. "You have known me for 20 years. You have seen what Sarah is like. But the second something bad happens, you turn on me." My voice was rising now, and I did not care. "You know I did not do it. Deep down, you knew. But instead of standing by me, you let me rot in jail while you played mom to the person who actually did this." Tears welled up in her eyes. But I was not about to feel sorry for her. She was not the one who had spent months in a cell, treated like a criminal. "I am sorry," she whispered. But it did not mean anything to me. Sorry did not give me back the months I lost. Sorry did not erase the fact that she doubted me when I needed her most. Over the next few days, I tried to piece my life back together. The investigation had finally turned up undeniable proof that Sarah was behind everything. The text messages on her phone showed that she had been dealing drugs for months, maybe longer. She had been using our house as a stash spot, hiding the heroin under my bed, so that if anything went wrong, I would take the fall. The texts were damning. They showed her coordinating with a dealer, talking about moving product, and even laughing about how Dad would never notice. I read every single one of them, my hands shaking with rage. How could my own daughter do this to me? What kind of person sets up their own father to save themselves? The police also found witnesses who came forward, saying they had seen Sarah sneaking around late at night, meeting with sketchy people in parking lots and alleyways. One of her so-called friends admitted that Sarah had bragged about hiding drugs in my house because she thought it was the perfect cover. When the police finally issued a warrant for her arrest, I felt a mix of relief and bitterness. Relief that they were finally going after the real culprit, but bitterness that it had taken so long and that I had had to pay the price for her actions. Sarah was arrested a few days after I got home. They found her staying at some rundown apartment with a bunch of low-lives. When the police searched the place, they found more drugs along with scales, baggies, and cash. It was clear she was not just using, she was fully involved in the drug trade. I thought seeing her arrested would bring me some kind of closure, but it did not. If anything, it just made me angrier. She did not look scared or ashamed when they took her away. She looked annoyed, like this was just some inconvenience she would have to deal with. My wife was devastated when she heard about the arrest. She is still our daughter, she kept saying over and over like a broken record. She has made mistakes, but she is still our baby. I could not take it anymore. She is not my daughter, I snapped. Not anymore. My daughter would not do this to me. My daughter would not destroy her own family just to save her own skin. The legal process that followed was long, exhausting, and messy, much like everything else Sarah had left in her wake. She was charged with possession of drugs, intent to distribute, and perhaps most painfully for me, false accusations against her own father. That charge hit me like a gut punch every time I heard it spoken aloud in court. Knowing that she had deliberately orchestrated my arrest, gone out of her way to frame me, and watched me suffer made my blood boil. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The texts between her and her dealer, the witness statements, and even her own carelessness when stashing drugs in her apartment painted a damning picture. But as damning as it was, it did not make things easier for me. Every court hearing, every delay, every smug look she gave when she was brought in for questioning, it all chipped away at whatever pieces of humanity I still clung to. As part of the investigation, Sarah was required to take a drug test. Unsurprisingly, it came back positive, not just for heroin, but for several other substances, including cocaine and amphetamines. It was the final nail in the coffin. The daughter I had once rocked to sleep as a baby, the little girl I had taught to ride a bike, was not just a liar and a manipulator. She was an addict and a criminal. Seeing the results did not shock me, but it hurt. It was one thing to know in your gut that your child is on a destructive path. It is another thing entirely to see it spelled out in black and white. Part of me wanted to feel pity for her, to see her as the victim of her own choices. But that part of me was drowned out by anger. She had not just ruined her life, she had tried to ruin mine. My lawyer told me I did not have to attend every hearing, but I could not stay away. I needed to see her face, needed her to know that I was not going to let her get away with this without seeing the damage she caused. At one point during the trial, her lawyer argued that Sarah's actions were the result of addiction, that she was not in her right mind when she reported me to the police. I could not stay silent, not about this. As I sat there, I knew this was not some desperate mistake driven by addiction. It was not about weakness or bad judgment. It was intentional. She had never been a family person, never cared about anyone but herself. This was not about drugs. It was about revenge. She wanted to hurt me and put me in trouble for kicking her out. That much was clear. But I kept those thoughts to myself, knowing that the truth was already laid bare for everyone to see. There was no need for me to speak. Her actions spoke louder than anything I could say. The trial dragged on for months, delayed repeatedly by procedural nonsense, and Sarah's lawyer trying to reduce her charges. Meanwhile, I tried to rebuild the wreckage of my life. People in the neighborhood still whispered when I walked by, some still unsure whether I was truly innocent despite the evidence. My wife seemed to exist in a constant state of denial. She is sick, she kept saying, like it was a mantra that would make all of this easier to swallow. She did not mean it. She did not mean it. I snapped one night after dinner. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was not just using, she was dealing. She put my name on a report to the police. How the hell do you not mean that? We are her parents, she said, her voice trembling, no matter what. Not anymore, I said coldly, pushing back my chair and leaving the table. When the verdict finally came, it felt more like a formality than a victory. Sarah was found guilty on all charges: possession of narcotics, intent to distribute, and filing false accusations. The judge did not hold back. However, instead of prison, she was sentenced to serve 8 years in a long-term drug rehabilitation center. The judge believed that addressing her addiction was critical to ensuring she did not repeat her actions. She showed little emotion as the sentence was read, only giving a slight shrug, as if to say, "It is what it is." I wanted to feel relief, but I did not. The damage was already done. 8 years would not erase the 5 months I spent in a cell. It would not fix the relationships that had been shattered or undo the stain on my reputation. If anything, her conviction felt like the closing chapter of a book I wish I had never started reading. After the trial, I got a restraining order against Sarah to make sure she could never come near me again. Even when she eventually gets out, I do not want her anywhere near my life. She made her choices, and I made mine. For a while, I could not sleep. I kept waking up in the middle of the night, haunted by everything that had happened. My wife, on the other hand, seemed stuck in the past. She started writing Sarah letters in prison, trying to keep some sort of relationship alive. At first, I did not say anything, but eventually it became too much. "What are you hoping to accomplish?" I asked her one night when I caught her sealing another envelope. "She is our daughter," she said again, that same broken mantra that had driven me up the wall for months. "She stopped being our daughter the day she put me in cuffs," I replied, my voice cold and sharp. "I do not care what she is going through. I do not care if she gets better. She is out of my life, and that is not changing." That conversation was the tipping point. We were no longer on the same page, no longer even in the same book. My wife clung to the idea of Sarah as the daughter we used to know, the little girl she had raised, the baby she once held. But that version of Sarah did not exist anymore. Not to me, and maybe not to anyone. It became clear that our marriage was not going to survive this. The trust between us was gone, eroded by months of doubt, anger, and pain. My wife had doubted me when I needed her most, and now she was trying to hold on to a relationship with the person who had destroyed everything we had built. How could we come back from that? The answer was simple: we could not. One night, after another tense argument about Sarah, I finally said it out loud. "I do not think we can keep doing this." My wife looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. "Are you saying you want to leave?" "I am saying this is not working," I said, my voice steady but heavy. "We are not the same people we were before all of this. I do not trust you, and you do not understand me anymore, and honestly, I do not think I can stay in this house surrounded by everything that reminds me of her." She nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "I do not want this, but I understand." We agreed to separate a few weeks later. She kept the house, the one place I did not want to be anymore. I moved into a small apartment across town, far enough to feel like I was starting fresh, but close enough to handle the practicalities of dividing our lives. It was not easy, but it was necessary. The worst part was not the physical separation. It was the realization that the life we had built together had crumbled so completely. We had spent 2 decades as partners, raising a family, building a home, only for it to fall apart in the wake of our daughter's actions. Sarah's choices had not just destroyed my trust in her. They destroyed my marriage. The worst part of all this was not the jail time or the trial. It was the realization that the life I thought I had was never as strong as I believed. My marriage had been hanging by a thread, and I had not even realized it until it was too late. Maybe someday I will find a way to let go of all this anger, but not today. Today, I just focus on putting one foot in front of the other and keeping Sarah as far away from me as possible. She made her choices, and she will live with the consequences.